So in your experience, is there, like, when you look at the CDC schedule, is there like a worst offender, like one that is bound to cause a lot of these chronic conditions, or is it truly a function of the cumulative load that's in these vaccines?
I would say that it depends on the individual. So I agree with the person earlier that was talking about how, it looked like we were leaning toward individualized precision medicine with the Human Genome Project, the emphasis of the Institute for Functional Medicine, and then somehow with COVID we slipped back into one-size-fits-all. And I've always been opposed to any one-size-fits-all strategy. So I think that it's very important to take into consideration the history of the child. For example, just using risk factors for autism, because that's something that, I've done a lot with. I'm more concerned if the baby was born by C-section because it didn't get that good vaginal flora inoculation to develop a good gut. I'm more concerned if it were a premature baby. I'm more concerned if there are family histories that suggest related neurodevelopmental disorders. So we might end up being more cautious in evaluating vaccine risk, which currently isn't really done. If I didn't need to know anything other than what the chart said, I wouldn't have had to go to medical school. You could just have medical assistants giving, whatever was on the chart. We need to apply the same kind of critical thinking to any vaccine decisions if the parent does want them, as we would to other types of medical judgments. So I think that thought that a vaccine can be an antecedent, a trigger, or a mediator, and all kinds of other environmental factors can be any one of those three, is a good way to think about it.
But isn't, Dr. Mumper, like the CDC recommended schedule, that is a one-size-fits-all, isn't it? Like where doctors
Yes.
are not really allowed to even like go beyond what's recommended, or even thinking of like delayed vaccinations or selective vaccinations. So
Well, that's actually not technically true, but most people feel that that is what they're supposed to do. Technically, that is a recommendation, and the physician does have the ability to do judgment about it. But if I weren't an independent physician and I was employed by a hospital group, my compensation, my pay is very likely related to how many kids I vaccinated in my practice. If I don't meet criteria for getting a certain number of vaccines, then my job might be in jeopardy.
I do see children in my practice with chronic illness, not just neurodevelopmental disabilities, but chronic illness, where they were not vaccinated at all. Maybe they got the vitamin K and nothing else, or nothing. And many, many years ago, within the last 28 years, I came across these studies on something called transgenerational epigenetics. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. I'll explain it. Don't worry. And so what transgenerational epigenetics showed was that in rats, if you gave a pregnant rat a pesticide or an herbicide during pregnancy, when her offspring were born, her progeny, there was a known defect seen in her babies. And when the scientists took those children of the mother and reproduced them when they were old enough, their progeny also still showed the defects that the grandmother, as a cause of the grandmother being exposed to that toxin. And then they reproduced the rats again. So now you have the great-grand rats of that rat who also still showed the effects of the toxic exposure when the great-grandmother was exposed. And not one of those generations was re-exposed to the toxin. That's called transgenerational epigenetics. The passage of effects of the environment on a pregnancy that still felt generations down. We vaccinate every generation.